So, Story of the Red Mountain. It was a commission from NIDA.
Yes, it was.
Right? Yeah. Can you just tell us how that came about and what?
Jane, Jane Bodie was running the playwriting program there, and she was very keen, as with the people at NIDA, to get an international playwright to come in and write for a show for students there. Jane thought, hang on, why don't I kill two birds with one stone and make it both Australian and international? He's from overseas. And I thought it'd be really interesting, given what was happening politically at the time, particularly for people in their 20s, which was the age group for the students at NIDA, look at people who wanted to overthrow governments, people who wanted to overthrow the system.
Do a little bit of sneaky inspiration.
Yeah, sneaky, that inspirational stuff. Yeah. And I wondered what, given some of the kind of the images about protest and politics that there were, I wondered what happens when you throw violence into the mix, and what happens when you throw the idea that, well, maybe it'd be a really good thing if there was violence. Just a what if, not necessarily an arguing that. But one thing that I learnt with the Headlong show, or at least confirmed with the Headlong show, is if you come up with some sort of provocation that you wouldn't normally want to agree with, some sort of arguable case, not just any sort of throwaway incendiary statement, but something that you can actually get your teeth into and argue, however heinous you think that the argument is, it gives you a good basis to kind of push some theatrical elements against. So making it about it being a really good idea for some communists to get together and to plan the violent overthrow of the state, I thought would be great.
While we're there, let's just do can you just give us a very brief portrait of the action of the piece?
Yeah. It's the night of the referendum in 51, where Menzies had put the question to the people: should the Communist Party and anybody who is even intending to become, or shows signs of intending to become, a communist, be banned, and should there be laws available to deal with all of that? Really quite draconian question. And it was running very, very, very 50-50.
Yeah.
And it's one of the few questions that hasn't been supported by both parties, where it looked like it was actually going to get up. So there were lots. So what's happening in the play is that there's a woman who's with her husband, who is a communist. She's not a communist. Having a bit of like an election night party, as you do.
Yeah. It does have a bit of a Don's Party feel about it.
Yeah. And as the night progresses, the wife realises, with all the communists there, that if the question is, well, if the referendum does mean that the Communist Party is banned, then her husband has set up a bunch of arms. Has got stuff left over from World War II, and all sorts of stuff from the docks, from the communists in the docks, that all of these people are brought in, and they'll be ready to start a little siege that they hope will turn into a big one from their position in the Blue Mountains hideaway home that they've got.
And is there, I mean, I know there's a disclaimer at the beginning of the text, but is there any historical basis in it?
There's a really nice rumour about Eleanor Dark, the writer, and her husband, that I thought, that's a really great rumour. And so I kind of pinched that rumour.
Yeah, right.
I mean, there's no evidence that they ever did anything like that.
Yeah.
But it's a great rumour, and you think, oh, wow. It's just one of those things that you can kind of flesh out and let yourself play with a few questions that come out of a rumour like that. Because rumours come from some sort of urge or hope that thing is true, even if it's a rumour that you think is scandalous. There's always a desire. Yeah.
And when you were making the piece, did you come out and work with the students? Did you develop it with them?
Yeah, very much. Yeah, Anthony, the lovely Anthony Scoos, was my development director, working with students out there. Worked with, I think, 24 students. And then it became 12. So it was, I had more than enough to play with. They were great researchers as well. So getting all of these pictures of the Blue Mountains in the 50s, pictures of communists. I went in to the. There was a great exhibition about what do you call it? ASIO, following communists around, and looked at Frank Hardy's file, that sort of thing. The photos that they took from across the street. That sense of paranoia, that lovely black and white paranoia. That you get in those grainy photographs. It's
a very, like all of your writing, it has very, very strong, and in this sense, very overt politic, actually. Is that how, I mean, I suppose my question is how important is that to you, which is a bit of a dumb question, because clearly it's very important. But as an artist, how much of a tool is art for politics, do you think?
I really like the paraphrase of the Brecht quote, which is, all theatre educates, good theatre entertains. So whether or not, if you're writing a drawing room comedy, you're actually being quite overt in your politics. I think of that as overtly political, because you're saying that the world is about, you're often saying, with one of those things, that the world is a very small, contained thing that is pretty much nothing really matters except embarrassment about sex. Like that's the politics. That's what you learn every time you go to a sex farce. You often don't...
As you do.
As you do, yeah. I've learned that many a time with my sexual farces. There's all sorts of stuff going on that it informs... It informs the world. It might push the limits of a discussion a little further, or it might bring them back in. I don't think you can have a direct effect necessarily on politics, but you think of something like Jane Harrison's Stolen, and how much that informed. You can't say it went on and therefore we got the apology. 15 years later, but it certainly informed that. So it's a very...
And it also had a very large international effect.
Absolutely.
As well, to it everywhere. And, I think it's told that story in a way that the world heard it.
So it's been conscious of the tool that it is, and I like playing with how conscious I am of its possibilities and bringing those in. And that's more of out of a desire to play with that rather than a desire to hammer anybody over the head with stuff.
Now that you're currently living in the UK, I'm just interested, because you're writing, if I think back to Post-Felicity, Falling Petals, These People, Red Mountain, which of course you wrote over there, but there's a very strong sense of vernacular in your writing, and it's not like, it doesn't remind me of the kind of Melbourne 70s, pram kind of thing, but it is very, very strongly Australian, the structure and the rhythm of it. Does your writing, is it changing in that way, or are you resisting that, or unconscious of it, conscious of it?
No, I'm pretty conscious of it. The imagination's hinterland is still very much in Australia. I think... it's funny because I do feel like I've got my own voice, and the voice is a rhythmic thing, and sometimes the layer that comes on top of that is accent. So is it changing? It depends on the piece.
And you just mentioned this thing about the hinterland. It's always a thing about diaspora, isn't it? You go and live somewhere else, and part of you is always linked back. And people can get very split when that happens. What's been your experience of that?
There were a good 6-7 years of split, feeling very torn between two. Not feeling properly British enough to to be involved in the British theatre. And if I was involved in the British theatre, it was as a sort of almost token Australian. And then back here, oh, but you've moved over to Britain, sort of thing. So I felt very, felt a bit lost, very lost. Yeah.
Just one final question, which is more centred around the play. I read it with a great... it hit me very nostalgically, not just for the 50s, which is because of, I suppose, Neil Armfield and, that a lot of his work has been so sort of positioned around that time, and the Dole, of course, is at the centre of the canon. I hate that word, but it is. We have to admit to its, its influence. And this little bunch of hopeful people, however misguided or weird or dumb or whatever one might think they are, it made me sad, that communism is gone. Well, it's not gone, but it's just so discredited, actually. Although it's interesting that socialism is making a very big rise, I think, in around dinner parties at the moment. I'm just wondering how much, for you, is there a sense of nostalgia in that for you? Is there a sense of sadness about that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I still think one of the the best political pamphlets written was the Communist Manifesto. Like, and actually, if you go through what the demands are of social democracy, I think it's called in the manifesto. Like, most of them have come about, and they've come about in liberal, democratic, capitalist systems. And if you took away those things that have actually come about, like progressive taxation, is just one of the demands. It wasn't everybody eat from the same bowl of gruel. It was progressive taxation. But they're actually, it wasn't about authoritarian sledgehammers or anything like that. I really like what was trying to be achieved by that kind of impulse, which was a democratic impulse, a communal impulse. That we've got problems and they're best solved by many, rather than hived off to a few people to patent and then make a lot of
stand and all of that. Of course.
So I think in funny ways, I think there's still an impulse for that, and to make the world better and better for the most. So I feel nostalgia for that impulse, but I also feel a bit of hope for that impulse as well. It wasn't meant to be a eulogy to that impulse.
Yes, no, I didn't sort of read it as a eulogy, I guess, but I was surprised at how strongly I reacted.
Oh, good.
To it like that. Great. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks.